She told the court, "He can't even put on a diaper properly." And she whispered to me, "If you give up the fight, I'll make a real man out of him." My own wife said nothing. I never thought I'd be writing this post, but here I am at 3 a.m., my son finally asleep in his crib, and I can't shake the feeling that my world just got turned upside down. 3 months ago, I became a father for the first time. 3 months ago, I thought I knew what love was. I was wrong. The moment they placed that tiny, wrinkled little human in my arms, something inside me just clicked. Like every single day before that moment had been practice, and this was the real thing starting. But apparently, according to my mother-in-law, I'm doing it all wrong. It started small, like these things always do. Little comments here and there. When I'd change his diaper, she'd hover over my shoulder, making these clicking sounds with her tongue. When I'd feed him, she'd adjust the angle of the bottle in my hands. When I'd rock him to sleep, she'd take him from me after 5 minutes, claiming I was holding him wrong. My wife would just shrug it off, saying her mom was just excited about being a grandmother. The thing is, I wasn't some clueless guy who'd never been around kids. I helped raise my little sister after my dad left when I was 15. I changed her diapers, fed her bottles, walked the floors with her when she had colic. I knew what I was doing. But every time I tried to explain this, my mother-in-law would get this look in her eyes, like I was some kind of imposter pretending to be a father. 2 weeks after we brought the baby home, she started showing up every single day. Not to help, but to supervise. She'd let herself in with the spare key my wife had given her and just plant herself on our couch, watching my every move like I was some kind of criminal. When I'd wake up for the 2 a.m. feeding, she'd already be there in the nursery, bottle in hand, giving me this smug smile like she'd beaten me to the punch. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. I was running on maybe 3 hours of sleep, trying to get the baby changed before work, and he was having one of those explosive diaper situations that all new parents know about. I'm talking full hazmat suit territory here. I had him cleaned up and was reaching for a fresh diaper when she swooped in, literally pushed me aside, and started over from scratch. That's when she said it. The thing that's been eating at me for weeks now. She looked me dead in the eye and said I was unfit to be a father. Not angry, not emotional. Just matter of fact, like she was commenting on the weather. She said I was too young, too inexperienced, too selfish to raise a child properly. She said my son deserved better than what I could give him. I stood there in my own nursery, covered in baby poop, and felt something inside me break. Not anger, not rage. Just this hollow, empty feeling like someone had reached into my chest and scooped out everything that mattered. Because deep down, in that place where your worst fears live, I wondered if she might be right. My wife came home from work that day to find me sitting on the kitchen floor, just staring at the wall. When I told her what her mother had said, she got quiet for a long time. Then she said maybe her mom had a point about me needing more help with the baby. Not agreeing exactly, but not disagreeing either. That hurt worse than anything her mother had said. The next few weeks were a blur of tension and awkward silences. My mother-in-law kept showing up, kept taking over, kept making these little comments about how much better the baby seemed when she was around. My wife started working longer hours, which meant more time alone with her mother's constant criticism. I started doubting everything I did. Was I holding him wrong? Was I feeding him too much? Too little? Was his crying my fault? I began staying up at night, long after everyone else was asleep, just watching my son breathe, studying his tiny face, trying to memorize every detail in case someone decided I didn't deserve to be his father. The paranoia was eating me alive, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. Then came the knock on the door that changed everything. Update 1. I can't believe I'm back here so soon, but I need to get this out before I lose my mind completely. The knock on the door I mentioned? It was a social worker. My mother-in-law had filed a formal complaint with Child Services, claiming I was an unfit parent who posed a danger to my son's well-being. The social worker was professional but thorough. She walked through our house, took notes on everything, asked me questions about my parenting techniques, my work schedule, my relationship with my wife. The whole time, my mother-in-law sat in our living room with this satisfied expression, like she was watching her favorite TV show. My wife stood in the corner, arms crossed, not saying a word in my defense. The investigation took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of surprise visits, interviews with neighbors, background checks, the whole 9 yards. I felt like a criminal in my own home. Every time I picked up my son, I wondered if someone was watching, judging, taking notes. Every diaper change felt like a performance I might fail. But here's the thing that really gets me. The social worker found nothing wrong. Nothing. In fact, she commented on how well cared for the baby was, how comfortable he seemed with me, how obvious it was that he was loved and healthy. She closed the case without any concerns. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? You'd be wrong. 3 days after the social services case was closed, I got served with legal papers. My mother-in-law was petitioning the court for emergency custody of my son. The paperwork was thick, professional, and absolutely devastating. Page after page of allegations about my fitness as a parent, my ability to provide for my child, my emotional stability. She'd kept a journal, apparently, documenting every time I'd struggled with a feeding, every time the baby had cried for more than a few minutes, every moment of normal new parent exhaustion and confusion. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. 1 week to prepare for the fight of my life. I spent the next few days in a fog, trying to figure out how my life had become a legal drama. My wife was barely speaking to me, spending most of her time at her mother's house. When I asked her directly whose side she was on, she said she just wanted what was best for the baby. Not exactly the ringing endorsement I was hoping for from my partner in this whole parenting thing. The night before the hearing, I sat in the nursery holding my son, trying to explain to him what was happening even though he couldn't understand. I told him about how much I loved him, how I'd never wanted anything more in my life than to be his dad, how I'd fight for him no matter what it cost me. He just looked up at me with those big, trusting eyes and grabbed my finger with his tiny hand. The hearing itself was surreal. Sitting in a courtroom while someone else argued about whether I deserved to keep my own child felt like being trapped in someone else's nightmare. My mother-in-law had hired a lawyer, a sharp woman in an expensive suit who painted me as an immature, irresponsible young man who'd gotten in over his head. She presented the journal, photos of the baby crying, testimonies from neighbors about hearing him cry at night. My court-appointed lawyer did his best, but I could tell he was outgunned. He presented the social services report, character references from friends and family, medical records showing the baby was healthy and developing normally. But the damage was done. The judge looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. Then came the moment I mentioned in my original post. During a recess, my mother-in-law cornered me in the hallway. She leaned in close and whispered that if I just gave up the fight, she'd make sure my son grew up to be a real man. She said she had the resources, the experience, the stability that I lacked. She said it would be better for everyone if I just walked away. I looked over at my wife, who was standing a few feet away, pretending to check her phone. She'd heard every word, and she said nothing. The judge ordered a temporary custody arrangement while a more thorough investigation could be conducted. My son would stay with my mother-in-law during the week, and I'd get supervised visitation on weekends. Supervised, like I was some kind of criminal who couldn't be trusted alone with my own child. Walking out of that courthouse without my son was the hardest thing I've ever done. I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried like I hadn't cried since I was a kid. Big, ugly sobs that came from somewhere so deep I didn't know it existed. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of weekend visits where every moment is scrutinized by a social worker taking notes. 3 weeks of going home to an empty nursery and trying to figure out how to get my life back. 3 weeks of my wife treating me like a stranger in our own house. But I'm not giving up. I can't. That little boy is everything to me, and I'll be damned if I let someone take him away just because they think I'm not good enough. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and I honestly didn't think I'd be back here with good news. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. Remember how I mentioned that my wife wasn't exactly being supportive through all this? Well, it turns out there was more going on behind the scenes than I realized. About a week after that first hearing, she started acting different. Not better exactly, but different. More distant, more thoughtful, like she was working through something big in her head. It all came to a head on a Thursday night. I was sitting in what used to be the nursery, just staring at the empty crib, when she walked in and sat down on the floor next to me. For a long time, we just sat there in silence. Then she started talking. She told me she'd been recording conversations with her mother. Not because she was planning to help me, but because she was trying to figure out what was really going on. Her mother had always been controlling, but this felt different, more intense, almost obsessive. She wanted to understand why her mother was so determined to take our son away from me. What she found out changed everything. Turns out, My mother-in-law had been planning this from the moment she found out we were having a baby. She'd consulted with lawyers, researched custody laws, even started building a case before our son was born. The journal she'd kept wasn't just documentation of my supposed failures as a parent. It was a calculated collection of evidence designed to make me look unfit. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what my wife overheard during one of those recorded conversations. Her mother wasn't just trying to get custody because she thought I was a bad father. She was trying to get custody because she wanted a do-over. She'd regretted not being more involved in raising my wife and her siblings, and she saw our son as her chance to start fresh, to raise a child the way she thought it should be done. She wasn't trying to save my son from me. She was trying to steal him for herself. When my wife played me those recordings, I felt a mix of vindication and heartbreak. Vindication because finally, someone else could see what I'd been seeing all along. Heartbreak because it meant my wife had doubted me enough to need proof that her mother was manipulating the situation. The recordings were exactly what my lawyer needed. Clear evidence of premeditation, of manipulation, of a plan to separate a child from his father for purely selfish reasons. We filed a motion to dismiss the custody petition and presented the evidence to the court. The hearing was nothing like the first one. This time, my mother-in-law's expensive lawyer looked uncomfortable as the recordings played in the courtroom. This time, the judge's expression shifted from skepticism to anger as she listened to my mother-in-law's cold, calculated plans to take my child away from me. The custody petition was dismissed immediately. The judge was furious about the misuse of the court system and the attempt to manipulate legal proceedings for personal gain. She awarded me full custody and ordered that any future contact between my mother-in-law and our son would require my explicit permission. I walked out of that courthouse carrying my son for the first time in 2 months. He'd grown so much, changed so much, and I'd missed it all because of one woman's selfish obsession. But he still knew me. He still relaxed in my arms, still looked at me with those trusting eyes, still grabbed my finger with his tiny hand. The aftermath has been complicated. My wife and I are working through everything that happened, trying to rebuild the trust that got damaged along the way. She's cut contact with her mother completely, which I know is hard for her, even after everything that happened. We're taking it one day at a time, learning how to be parents together without someone constantly telling us we're doing it wrong. My mother-in-law has tried to reach out a few times, but I've blocked her everywhere. I found out from other family members that she's been telling people her version of the story, painting herself as the victim who was just trying to help. Some people believe her. Some people think I'm the bad guy who turned a wife against her mother. I've stopped caring what people think. What matters is that my son is home where he belongs. What matters is that I get to wake up every morning to his babbling from the nursery, get to feed him his bottles, get to change his diapers without someone hovering over my shoulder telling me I'm doing it wrong. What matters is that I get to be his father, not just on supervised weekend visits, but every single day. I've learned a lot about myself through all this. I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was, that I'll fight harder than I ever imagined possible when it comes to protecting my child. I've learned that family isn't always the people you're related to, and that sometimes the people who are supposed to support you are the ones who'll hurt you the most. But mostly, I've learned that being a father isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up every single day, even when you're exhausted and confused and making mistakes. It's about loving someone more than you love yourself, and being willing to fight the whole world if that's what it takes to keep them safe. My son is 8 months old now. He's crawling everywhere, getting into everything, and driving me absolutely crazy in the best possible way. When he falls down, he looks to me to pick him up. When he's scared, he reaches for me. When he's happy, he claps his hands and babbles like he's telling me all about his day. He doesn't know about the court battles, or the custody hearings, or the woman who tried to take him away from me. All he knows is that his dad is here, that his dad loves him, and that his dad will always fight for him no matter what. Final update. I keep telling myself I'm done posting about this, but I realized I needed to close the loop on this whole nightmare, especially since some of you have been following along and asking for updates. It's been a year now since everything started, and 8 months since the final court hearing. My son is walking now, getting into everything, and has developed this habit of bringing me his books when he wants to be read to. He can't talk yet, but he's got this whole system of pointing and babbling that somehow I understand perfectly. Being his dad has become as natural as breathing. The relationship with my wife took longer to heal than I expected. For months after everything was resolved, there was this tension between us, this unspoken question of why it took recorded evidence for her to believe that her mother was manipulating the situation. We had some hard conversations about trust, about loyalty, about what it means to have each other's backs when the world feels like it's falling apart. She eventually explained that her mother had been in her ear since childhood, planting seeds of doubt about everyone in her life, making her question her own judgment about people and situations. The manipulation didn't start with our son. It had been going on for decades. Recognizing it and breaking free from it was harder than I understood at the time. We're in a good place now. Not perfect, but good. We've learned how to make decisions together without outside interference, how to trust each other's instincts as parents, how to create boundaries that protect our little family. Some scars take time to heal, but we're getting there. My mother-in-law made one last attempt to contact us about 6 months ago. She sent a long letter through a relative, claiming she'd been misunderstood, that she only wanted what was best for everyone, that family should forgive and move forward. The letter was full of the same manipulative language I'd grown to recognize, the same subtle blame shifting and guilt tripping that had been her signature moves all along. I threw the letter away without showing it to my wife. Some people deserve second chances. Some people deserve to be heard out. Some people deserve forgiveness. But some people have shown you exactly who they are, and believing them the first time is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. My son will grow up without knowing his grandmother on his mother's side. That makes me sad for him, but not sad enough to risk exposing him to someone who sees children as possessions to be won rather than people to be loved. He's got plenty of love in his life from people who care about his well-being instead of their own egos. The legal bills from everything were brutal. We're still paying them off. Will be for another year or so. But every month when I write that check, I think about how much it was worth it. Some things you can't put a price on, and keeping my son safe from someone who wanted to use him for her own emotional needs is definitely one of those things. I think about that conversation in the courthouse hallway sometimes, when she told me she'd make a real man out of him if I just gave up the fight. What she didn't understand then, and probably still doesn't understand now, is that being a real man means showing up for the people you love, even when it's hard. It means fighting for what matters, even when the odds are stacked against you. It means putting someone else's needs before your own pride, your own comfort, your own desire to avoid conflict. My son is going to grow up knowing that his father fought for him. He's going to grow up seeing what it looks like when someone loves you enough to risk everything to keep you safe. He's going to grow up understanding that family is about loyalty and protection and unconditional love, not about control and manipulation and emotional games. Most nights, after he's asleep in his crib, I stand in his doorway and watch him breathe, just like I did during those terrifying weeks when I thought I might lose him. But now it's not fear that keeps me there. It's gratitude. Gratitude that he's safe, that he's mine, that I get to be his dad every single day for the rest of his life. To anyone out there dealing with toxic family members who think they know better than you about your own life, your own children, your own decisions, trust your instincts. Set your boundaries. Fight for what matters. The people who truly love you will respect your choices, even when they don't understand them. The people who don't respect your choices don't deserve access to your life. My son is napping right now, and when he wakes up, we're going to read books and play with blocks, and probably make a mess in the kitchen trying to figure out lunch. Just normal dad stuff, the kind of stuff I almost lost the right to do. The kind of stuff that makes every sleepless night, every court hearing, every legal bill completely worth it. Being a father isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. And I'm not going anywhere.